Welcome, and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants are in listen-only mode. Today's webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be posted publicly. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Now I would like to turn the call over to your host, Linda Lee. Linda, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Victoria. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Linda Lee, and I would like to welcome everyone to the Exploring Census Data webinar series. For those of you that have been following our series, welcome back. For anyone that may be new to our series, the Exploring Census Data webinar series is a set of webinars where we present data from the Census Bureau by topics. Other features of the series, the webinars are presented on a monthly basis, so please stay tuned for new and exciting topics in the upcoming months. Another feature includes access to the archived copies, and the recording of this session, along with the slides, will be available in about 5 to 10 business days. Now, today's webinar is the 5th installment in the series. So far, we've broadcasted sessions on the services, healthcare, construction, and retail sectors of the economy. If you have missed one of these sessions and would like to view it again, please visit the Census Academy on census.gov. Today, we will be providing you with information and data on the public sector of the economy. You'll learn about both business and demographic data available to help you with your research and make informed business decisions. Now, with that being said, we have lined up 2 speakers for you today that are experts in their field and ready to impart their knowledge on the topic. You'll be able to ask questions using the Q&A feature throughout the webinar, and our experts will be available to you at the end of the presentation as well. Our first speaker is Ms. Melinda Caskey. Melinda is a survey statistician with our public sector program area. Melinda will take you on a journey to include many programs with highlights including state and local government finances to employment, pensions, and many more. Then our next speaker is Dr. Mary McKay. Mary is a survey statistician from the American Community Survey. Mary will be presenting the demographic aspect of the public sector as it relates to the nation's population. Now, before we dive into today's session, please note that we are utilizing technology off-site, and we aim to provide you with the best experience possible. Should we experience any technical delays during our session, please utilize the chat feature to let us know of issues, and we will mitigate them as soon as possible. On our agenda for today, we will be diving into a brief background about the Census Bureau before we explore the public sector. Please take note that we have provided the location of our archived recordings for you here. Along with that, if you're interested in stories behind the data, please check out the America Counts page where you'll be able to access the stories. We also have data visualizations that you can use for your own needs. All of these resources are free and available on census.gov under the library section of the site. The Census Bureau is the federal government's largest of the 13 statistical agencies, where we conduct over 130 surveys each year, with some of our well-known ones listed here. First on the list, many people recognize the decennial census, which takes place every 10 years, and it counts the population and housing. Next is the American Community Survey, which is a yearly survey on the nation's population. Now, from the business data side of the house, we have the economic census that measures American businesses. For the public sector's counterpart of the economic census, we have the Census of Governments. This is the official 5-year measure of the nation's state and local government sector. Our mission is to serve as the leading source of quality data. With that, it may be helpful to know the structure of our data releases. We have a range of release frequencies from the decennial to quinquennials, annuals, and monthlies. And it's good to note that there is an inverse relationship between the frequency of releases and the level of details. So for instance, using the surveys listed on this slide, the economic census takes place every 5 years, and it is the most comprehensive source for business data. Now, while the annual survey of state and local government finances is more timely, the level of details is reduced. Here you'll notice that for business data, we have 17 monthly and quarterly surveys, with some of our widely used ones such as the retail and wholesale trade surveys listed here. The monthly and quarterly surveys include programs that serve as key economic indicators. And we have 20 economic surveys that are released annually. So with over 130 surveys, I highly encourage you to check out our site and discover all the possibilities. Now, because the economic census is our largest undertaking for business data, it's good to know that it takes place every 5 years in the years ending in 2 and 7. So the 2022 economic census is right around the corner. The survey will be conducted in 2023 with businesses reporting their 2022 year-end numbers. The Census of Government is the public counterpart of the economic census and will be conducted during similar time frame. To learn more about the program, please use the link in the third bulleted point here that will take you directly to the program's main page. Data is available to you for free for nearly every industry and geography down to the place level. And this type of information can be helpful in making informed business decisions. Now with that, I would like to turn the presentation over to our first speaker, Ms. Melinda Caskey.
Thank you, Linda. We'll dive right in, starting with the annual survey of state and local government finances. At Census, we have different groups that handle local government finance and state government finance, but they coordinate and combine their results to create the annual survey of state and local government finances. Census provides the only comprehensive source of government finance information. Census compiles all government finance data into the same framework, which allows comparability across geographies. And this is only government units, no businesses, and the classification is by functional category. We don't use NAICS codes, the National North American Industry Classification System that you might have heard of, or sectors in government. We'll talk more about functional categories in a second. We collect all expenditure data, revenue data, the debt flows, and assets held by governments. This is a small snippet of what the data for state finance looks like. The values are in thousands. It has both US totals and state by state values. I know that font is small, but I'm not trying to highlight the data here, but rather show you the formatting of the category names. You can see that they are indented at different degrees and they're grouped into like items. This formatting has meaning. This is something I drafted to help demonstrate some of the hierarchy and the grouping and formatting of that data table that we saw in the previous slide. You can see that there are some nesting of categories. So here, education expenditure separates out elementary and secondary from higher education. And for many categories, capital outlays are separated from total expenditures. The same formatting helps us understand the structure of revenues as well. This really helps us to understand how all of these items combine to equal total revenue. It can be an intergovernmental transfer, revenue from charges, or from taxes. People can be better voters and citizens simply by understanding more about government revenues and expenditures. This reinforces what we just saw in the tree diagrams, but it drills down to one specific source of state revenue, motor fuel sales tax. This has been on the news a lot lately. I wanted you to see how it feeds into total revenue. The top table has the data for Colorado, which is sort of middle of the pack for motor fuel tax rates. And for comparison, California is below, which has some of the higher rates on motor fuel sales tax. You can see that motor fuel tax is about 4.4% of Colorado state taxes and about 4.9% of California state taxes. Without census data, compiling this data into one uniform structure, comparing these numbers state by state would be almost impossible, but census data allows these comparisons. Just for reference, I also put Colorado next to Alaska, which has the lowest motor fuel sales tax rates. You can see motor fuel sales taxes are 3.68% of total taxes in Alaska, but about 18.09% of all sales and gross receipt taxes. Not only do we have some basis for comparison state to state, but we also get some insight into how a state structures their revenues and expenditures. Something else state finance creates is a special report of lottery revenues and expenditures. This has been in the news a lot lately as well. This chart is a ratio of the total sales in lottery to the prizes paid out for lottery games. You can see Missouri pays out over 70% of lottery sales in prizes, and South Dakota pays out about 20% in prizes. But often when these lotteries are legislated, the state legislature decides what ratio they're comfortable with. 5 states don't have a lottery, so we don't see all 50 here. The second piece of the public sector finance puzzle is the annual survey of public employment and payroll, or we call it ASPEP. In a similar way to the state and local finance, annual public employment and payroll is for governments only, no businesses. But one key difference is that ASPEP measures the month of March. If you think about that for a second, it makes sense. March is outside of the temporary jobs of the holiday season and outside of the temporary jobs of the summer entertainment and tourist season. So if you want consistent numbers, March is a pretty good month to choose. They collect data on both full-time and part-time employee counts, including the number of employees, the payroll, and their hours worked. And they also create an important calculation to create full-time equivalent variables from the part-time employees and hours worked calculations, which can be important for some data analysis. You can see the link here for the 2021 summary report, which is a brand new release of data and worth taking a look at when you have time. I'm going to show you this same chart for the state of Colorado and local governments of Colorado so that you can compare the two. So this is state payroll by function. I promised we'd revisit those functional categories. And this is one of the best ways to visualize the various government functions. You can see the top payroll categories for the state of Colorado are higher education salaries, followed by corrections and judicial and legal salaries. Now, this is the same chart for local governments of Colorado only. I did have to cut it to the top 20 functional categories because local governments are responsible for many more functions than the state in general, and they wouldn't all fit on one chart. You can see the top payroll category for local governments are elementary and secondary education salaries, followed by police with powers of arrest and firefighters. This is the third piece of the public sector finance puzzle, the annual survey of public pensions. When we talk about public pensions, we are talking about defined benefit pension plans and only public sector pensions. So no private pensions and no 401k type of accounts. We measure membership by type, total assets invested, and all cash flows in or out for contributions or gains on investment or payments made to beneficiaries. We have begun collecting actuarial data as well and have a separate data issue for that preliminary data. This chart outlines how memberships break out. Again, the combination of active members, inactive members, and beneficiaries in state level pensions is much larger than for local governments. We define inactive members as people who are eligible for a pension in the future, but are not currently contributing to that pension plan. Understand too that you don't have to be a state employee to be part of a state pension plan. Many local governments offer pensions to their employees through state administration of state administered pension plans. Notice that almost 35 million people in some form participate in public pensions. I have outlined here where contributions to public pensions come from. The two largest sources are state employee contributions and state government contributions. The smallest categories of contributions are from local employees and local governments. The contributions from all sources are not enough to make the pension payments to retirees. Pensions rely on investment gains to make up the difference between contributions and payments made. Pensions paid out $338 million in 2021, while contributions were $244 million. If you remember, when we talked about state and local government finance, we mentioned taxes as a source of revenue. One of our specialty data products that separates that out is the annual survey of state government tax collections. It includes data for 5 broad categories and up to 25 subcategories. The numbers are included in the state finance revenues, as we saw before. The State Finance Branch has just published a really cool interactive visualization that I want to share with you. As you can see, they have created a way to visualize through time the changes in state tax collection. So let's look for our motor fuel tax. Here it is, item T13. Now, if we autoplay, we can see how these collections have changed through time per capita. It's a bit like watching a horse race, in my opinion. Some of these shifts may be to actual changes of increased consumption and sales, but they may also be a legislative change where the government had changed the tax rate. But through time, it gives you quite an indication of how these administration of taxes changes. And the reason they used per capita was simply so that they were comparable state by state, because obviously the larger states would always end up on top if we had raw numbers instead of per capita numbers. Very interesting. In addition to that state tax collection survey, they also create the annual survey of school system finances. It's a standalone report that provides deeper information about school finances. It breaks down the revenue and spending by state. It provides statistics on per pupil spending, capital outlays, indebtedness, and other key variables. One interesting thing from the survey of school system finances is the per pupil current spending. Our friends in Colorado are just a little right of center at approximately $11,602 per pupil in 2020. The data also feeds into state finance statistics, just as the tax data did. The census of governments was mentioned by Linda. It's like any other census in that it's an official enumeration of an entire population, but in this case, the population is all state and local governments. All public sector divisions participate in the census of governments. State and local government finance, public employment, and public pensions are all part of the census of governments. The questions and the content of the census of governments are the same as the content in a regular annual survey. This is unlike the economic surveys at census. Most other economic surveys have additional questions during a census year. The difference for us between a regular year and a census year is the number of units we're surveying. State finance naturally includes all 50 states and Washington, D.C. every year. But local governments, public employment, and public pensions have everyone in the pool for a COG year. The COG is every 5 years. So yes, 2022 is a COG year. We're gearing up to survey next month. COG also includes the government units survey, which updates the list of government units because changes happen all the time. The individual state descriptions publication is one of my favorite COG products. I put a small copy of a page of the individual state description here. It talks about Mile High Stadium in Colorado, and it explains that in 1996, they created legislation for the Metropolitan Football Stadium District that is governed by a board of directors. So one member of the Denver Broncos board is a member of the Colorado Rockies board and vice versa. So both teams have some input on what the other professional team does. The district creation gives them power to set rents, set fees, tolls, make charges, collect sales taxes, and issue special obligation bonds. So they have some basic powers of self-governance. They have a lot of gems like that in the individual state descriptions publication. I want to quickly mention a couple of our quarterly surveys, starting with the quarterly survey of public pensions. The quarterly survey of public pensions is not like the annual survey. First, the population that we survey is a panel of the largest 100 pension plans. And second, the data variables we collect are not the same as annual. Quarterly pensions is considered an economic indicator survey. This means by keeping track of how these large pension plans adjust their investment portfolios in response to economic conditions, we can determine some larger shifts in the market and the economy that are harder to measure using other indications. This chart shows several quarters side by side. It is subtle, but every change up or down in a single category represents some response in their investment portfolios to market conditions. People can get a lot of information from this and tie it into the markets. The quarterly summary of state and local tax revenue is another quarterly economic indicator that Census publishes. Quarterly tax, or Q-tax, is an estimate of tax collection. It's not the final value, but a point-in-time measurement. It provides early clues about changes in tax collection, which can provide further clues about economic shifts. For example, if Q-tax indicates a drop in sales tax collections, that might indicate that people are purchasing less and the economy might experience some contraction. Researchers can learn many things from these advanced indicators. I could probably talk about this further all day, but Mary McKay is here and she has further information about the connections between the community data and the public sector data. So let me stop presenting and I'll let Mary share her screen.
Thanks, Melinda. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mary McKay, and I work in the American Community Survey Office. So today I'm going to explain what the American Community Survey is and the various topics and geographies it contains, share some of the many ways you can access ACS data, and then I'll conduct a brief demonstration of how you can access social, demographic, economic, and housing data on public sector workers using the ACS in data.census.gov. And finally, I'll share some resources and opportunities as you begin or continue the journey using ACS data yourself. To begin, the American Community Survey, or ACS, is the nation's most current, reliable, and accessible data source for social, economic, housing, and demographic data at many geographic levels. Per year, the ACS surveys 3.5 million residential addresses and helps to inform over $670 billion of federal funding each year. The survey itself has over 40 topics, such as age, educational attainment, disability status, income, and more. The ACS supports over 300 evidence-based government uses. The Census Bureau typically releases 3 different sets of data estimates from the ACS each year in the form of 1-year and 5-year period data sets, as well as 1-year supplemental estimates. The data products produced by the ACS consist of 1-year estimates for populations of 65,000 or more, which are typically released in September, the calendar year after collection. 1-year supplemental estimates for populations of 20,000 or more, usually released in October, the calendar year after collection. And finally, 5-year estimates, providing data for all population sizes, which are usually released in December, the calendar year after collection. So the release dates for 2021 ACS data are September 15th for the 1-year, October 20th for the 1-year supplemental, and December 8th for the 5-year estimates. So please see the data release page listed at the bottom of the slide for more information. The content collected by the ACS can be grouped into 4 main types of characteristics, which you've probably heard me say already: social, economic, housing, and demographic. On the left here, you can see some of the social characteristics listed, including popular topics such as disability and educational attainment. The ACS also collects basic demographic characteristics such as age, Hispanic origin, race, relationship, and sex. This is the same information collected on the decennial census. Economic characteristics below include such topics as income, employment status, and the others you see here. And then housing characteristics listed all the way on the right include both the physical and financial characteristics of housing, such as year built and home value. For those interested in public sector workers, economic characteristics like industry and occupation will be important, as you will see shortly in my demonstration. Each question on the ACS is required for federal and state government programs. We provide a resource on the ACS website called the Why We Ask page, which gives the public information on the required use cases for these questions, as well as how they appear on the questionnaire. The ACS provides data for more geographies on an annual basis than any other household survey. We can see here on this slide how different levels of geographies interact with one another. Lower geographic areas fit neatly within the larger areas directly connected with lines. For example, congressional districts, school districts, and places, think cities, towns, and other municipalities, fit neatly within states and do not cross state boundaries, but they may cross boundaries of counties or metropolitan areas since they're not directly connected. The ACS's unique ability to report on a wide range of geographies is what gives it such a broad appeal. As shown on the previous slide, the ACS covers a large number of geographic areas. So most common of these geographies is at the state, county, census tract, and block group levels. So this slide shows the relationship of these geos and the relationship between them. Here we can see the state of Colorado and then the counties which make up the state. So let's specifically look at Denver County. Zooming in, we see the census tract image where we can see the tracts that make up Denver County. Census tracts are statistical subdivisions within a county containing populations of 1,200 to 8,000 people. So think small towns, rural areas, or neighborhoods. Census tracts are then made up of what we refer to as block groups. Block groups have populations between 600 and 3,000 people. With census tracts and block groups, you can see and access granular data by the ACS, and providing data at such geographies is a great attribute of the ACS. It's helpful to know more about the types of data products available in the ACS. Broadly speaking, the data products are either tables or profiles. The most popular types of tables are detail tables, which you're going to see in my demo coming up. They provide access to the most detailed ACS data and cross-tabulations of ACS variables. These tables begin with a B or C in data.census.gov, and they're the only type that go down to the block group level. Subject tables include more detailed ACS data classified by subject, just as the name suggests. Tables provide a precise or detailed view of a subject, and the subject matter is the focus of the table. The other data product are data profiles. So the ACS includes the following type of profiles. Data profiles, which provide broad social, economic, housing, and demographic profiles, and comparison profiles that offer comparisons of data profile estimates across ACS years. Profiles offer a broad look at a community's social, economic, housing, and demographic characteristics. They include many different variables, and the geography or population group is at the center. As for finding and accessing ACS data, there are many sources available. Here's a list of just a few ways to access ACS data, and I'm going to highlight just a few of them here. Data.census.gov is the Census Bureau's main data dissemination platform to access Census Bureau statistics. This is the primary way to access data for the ACS. All ACS data tables starting in 2010 are available on data.census.gov. Sit tight. This is the tool that I'm going to demonstrate very shortly. QuickFacts provides selected statistics for all states, counties, and for cities and towns with a population of 5,000 or more using the ACS, as well as other Census Bureau datasets. It is a fast and easy to use application that provides key information. Census Business Builder provides selected demographic data from the ACS and economic data from the Census Bureau to help users start or grow a business or understand the business landscape. And finally, the Application Programming Interface, or API, lets developers create custom apps to reach new users and makes key demographic, socioeconomic, and housing statistics more accessible than ever before. It is also important to note that ACS data prior to 2010 can only be accessed through the API. So as I just said, data.census.gov is the primary way to access ACS data. I want to now go into how to access ACS data using data.census.gov with a brief demonstration. There are a few considerations to be made before reviewing ACS data in this context. Because it is a household survey, the ACS provides information about those who reside in your area, not necessarily those that work there. Depending on your geography of interest, there may be different data sets available to you. To remind you, our 1 year are only for geographies with populations of 65,000 or more. 5-year estimates include all geographies regardless of population size. The main caveat of this last point is that the block group level data are only released in our detailed tables. To learn more about data.census.gov, please visit the link at the bottom of the slide. So here we are at data.census.gov. If you know the table ID already, you can use the search bar to type it in. You can also use it to search keywords. So here I'm going to type in industry in Denver County. I've selected a keyword and a geography. So from the options popping up, I'm going to select the second option here, because that's the geography that I want. In this window, with the tables relevant to my search popping up, you can see the filters on the left side. What's nice about this is you can also select other filters, such as adding additional geographies or at specific ACS data products to narrow down your search. So I'm going to change my view to 50 and then scroll down to see all the tables relevant to my search. So let's check out table C24070, industry by class of worker for civilian employed population 16 years and over. I'm going to click on this table to pull it up, but you're going to see the other tables are available to look at if this one doesn't have what you're looking for. So this table is actually perfect for what I want. So if I scroll down, I see local, state, and federal state government workers. And here I'm defining public sector as this, local, state, and federal government workers. So I can see that in Denver County, Colorado, 45,500 of the civilian employed population 16 years and over work in this sector. And then within this, a large number, 22,566, work in educational services and healthcare and social assistance. So I could make a proportion with these estimates by dividing 22,566 by the total number of public sector, 45,500, to get about 50%. I want to show you a really helpful resource by clicking on this notes icon here at the top. As you see, this tab has a lot of really good information right off the bat, but I want to show you a valuable tool by clicking on the technical documentation tab here. So this link pulls up the ACS webpage for code lists, definitions, and accuracy. So I want to focus your attention on subject definitions. So as I click and view this document in Google Chrome, I can click on the left, find population variables, which are arranged alphabetically, and then select industry. So here it tells me how it's defined, what questions on the survey are used to create the variable, and then coding procedures. So I highly recommend checking this document out first as you are going through ACS data and have any questions about the variables you're looking at. So coming back to data.census.gov, you can see these icons up at the top, and you can do the same thing as over here by adding and subtracting geographies. You can also use this drop-down to change the year or data product, depending on what you need. Generally, 5-year estimates are more precise as they're the result of 60 months of data collection, and the 1-year estimates are the most current as a result of 12 months of data collection. Since Denver County has a population of over 65,000, you will see that it has 1-year estimates available. If you are exploring smaller geographies, you might notice in this dropdown that no one-year estimates are available. You can easily download these tables in Excel or CSV by selecting these icons here at the top. Just a note, the Excel file will be the one that mirrors what you are seeing in this browser most closely. I hope this brief demonstration was helpful to you in seeing how you can easily look at specific subjects and topics within your geographies of interest. Note that there are several valuable webinars and data gems available at census.gov/academy to help you learn more about accessing data via data.census.gov. Now with that introduction to the ACS, I'm going to share some resources with you, some of which I've already mentioned in my presentation. So first, we have the ACS main page, which can be found simply by going to census.gov/ACS. It has a lot of information about the survey, data products, tools for data users, and other helpful information. If you have further interest in ACS data moving forward and like to see how others in the ACS data community are using the data, visit the ACS Data Users Group at acsdatacommunity.prb.org. This group improves understanding of the ACS and promotes information sharing among users. Discussion threads created by users on various topics and technical questions about the ACS. It also provides information on upcoming ACS data events, and it contains PowerPoint presentations and some video recordings from past data user conferences. Membership is free, and myself and colleagues are members of the group consisting of over 3,700 users. If you do use ACS data, please stay in touch by telling us how the data were used. For example, if you or your organization or business use the ACS to make an important decision, help your community, or expand your business, visit the link at the bottom of the slide to share your story with us. We do publish these stories after working with the submitter, and these testimonials provide further support for the importance of the data collected through the ACS. Before I hand it back over to Linda, here's some information for keeping in touch with the ACS. Again, you can visit our website, census.gov/ACS. For support, you can reach out to us at acso.users.support@census.gov or by the phone number provided on the slide. You can sign up for and manage alerts on ACS news and events such as conferences and webinars via GovDelivery, or connect on social media using the hashtag ACSData. And finally, if you end up using ACS data in reports or applications, please be sure to source us, as this helps promote the ACS and allows others to know where the data can be found. Thank you for your time this afternoon. Back to you, Linda.
Thank you, everyone, for your interest and time today attending today's webinar. Thank you, Melinda and Mary, for presenting our audience with a wide range of data that we have at the Census Bureau. Now, before we begin the Q&A portion of this webinar, please take note of the contact information on this slide. For anyone that may be interested in a hands-on in-person training, we have data dissemination specialists that are available to provide this service. Now, as a reminder, we're focusing our Q&A on today's topic, and we'll be accepting questions related to today's topic. If you have questions on any other topics, please feel free to send us an email to census.askdata@census.gov. To ask your question, please use the raise your hand feature to be included in the queue so that you may ask your question. And at this time, I see that we have a question.
My question is, are there any units of government that overlapping special use units of government that get excluded from some of these surveys? For example, I work for a metropolitan planning organization. So, for example, are those covered? Also, like school districts or special water districts and stuff like that?
That's a great question. I am going to refer to our specialists, Steve Owens and Melinda Caskey.
Sure. This is Steve Owen. So I have kind of a mixed answer to your questions. Regional planning councils are kind of a special animal for us, and we do not cover those because of duplication of data. However, that is something we do want to study in the future and perhaps include them. Beyond that, though, we do include pretty much everything else: school districts, special districts, you name it. Anything that is a unit of government, state or local, will include.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you, Nick, for your question. Jennifer, okay. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, I'm interested in learning more about the ACS data. And as I understand it, this data is released early to journalists, sometimes about, a month early to journalists ahead of the schedule. So I'm wondering if the census has ever released this data early to the federal government to help in better calculate really important measures. Like I'm thinking of HUD's fair market rent that uses ACS recent mover data. So I'm wondering if that's ever been done to be able to give a better estimate of rents across the country with the most recent data that has to be posted by September 1st. And like, for instance, this year, the data is being posted September 15th, which just misses the ability to use the most recent mover data.
Okay, that's a good question. So I will refer that goes to Mary and her ACS team.
Hi, Jennifer. This is Amanda Klimek in the American Community Survey Office. I work with Dr. Mary McKay, who is the presenter today. We actually have an embargo period for media in our standard 1 year and 5 year data releases. That period is actually 2 days, not a month. I can give you the I can give you the link to. We have an embargo site in our newsroom, and you can, if you'd like to apply as a member of the media, you can apply to be a part of the embargo site.
Okay, no, I'm not a member of the media. I was curious about whether that could be released early to the federal government to have more accurate calculations of fair market rent, which impacts dozens of HUD programs. But thank you for clarifying. That's only 2 days, not a month.
All right, thank you very much. I'll post the link in the chat.
Thank you, Amanda, for your help, and Jennifer for your question. Let's move to our next question from Margarita. Hello, Margarita.
Thank you. I have a question about census tracts and blocks. If we don't know what they are, how do we find them? And thank you.
Okay, that is going to go to our ACS team.
Yes, thanks, Margarita. Are you referring to, say you have like a building or an address and you're not sure what census tract it lays on? Is that kind of the line of questioning? Because if that's the case,
yeah, I'm sorry.
Yes. Sorry, no, you're fine.
Sorry.
What I was gonna say is just email, if you want to email that ACS user support, I can send you links to a couple resources where you can either type in an address and you'll be able to find the census tract and block group that that address falls within, and other resources like that for you to help you find those.
Yeah, that'll be great. Thank you. And
Yes.
Thank you for these webinars. They're very helpful.
Awesome.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Margarita, for your question. Our next question comes from Kara. Kara, please unmute yourself to ask your question. Hi, Kara.
Hello?
Yes, hello, how are you?
I'm great. I'm curious about subpopulations like gender identity or sexual orientation, LGBTQ topics. Is there a way to define that per area throughout the state?
Okay, so I'm not sure if our ACS team would have resources to that. Mary, would you happen to know if there are resources to that?
Currently, the ACS does not collect that information per se. But again, if you want to reach out to that email, I can send you some resources that might not necessarily directly answer, but might give you direction.
Okay. And then my next question was regarding foster care and foster youth, regarding like extending care. Is there any subpopulation definition for a topic like that?
I will, again, you can send it to that email, and I'm fairly certain that we don't collect that specific information, but I can show you at least what we do collect.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Rhea. Our next question comes from Kent. Kent, please unmute yourself to ask your question.
All right, then my question was about migration patterns within the U.S. and its territories, I guess within the U.S. frontier, you might call that in-migration, and also immigration that's across the national boundary. Some statistics on those patterns of migration that you might gather. Where I find those?
Okay, I'm not sure if we have that from the ACS, but we most likely have that from our other demographic programs, but I'll hand it over to Mary just to be sure.
This is Vic. Kent, we do have ACS migration and geographic mobility data. We have a link called ACS Migration Geographic Mobility Data Tables on our website. But if you email us, I can give you more specific information on and get more details about what you're looking for at the user support email, acso.users.support@census.gov.
It's not the census.askdata@census.gov. Anyway, I'll just.
Well, I mean, you could, it'll get just rerouted to us. So.
Okay, well, just put that in the text if you can.
It was on the last slide.
Okay, all right.
That was your acso.users.support@census.gov.
All right, thank you.
Kent, I'll also add for immigration, you can also go to the USCIS data sets. It's a different federal agency, but they might have some statistics that you're looking for.
Right, and it's not just immigration, but what I think what you call
right. We also collect migration statistics too, but they might also have more details if you're looking for that specifically.
We hear a lot about people moving from one state to another, and so.
ACS will have,
Thank you, Vicki and Mary, for your help. Thank you, Kent, for your question there. Our next caller is Nick. Nick, please unmute yourself to ask your question.
Yes, I work for a metropolitan planning organization covering multiple local jurisdictions. As part of that planning work, I have to create a fiscal constraint analysis incorporating information from all those jurisdictions for an estimate of base year and projected available revenues and expenditures. And so I was wondering how useful the government public sector census would be for that kind of work.
Okay, great question. I'm going to hand that over to Steve and Melinda.
Yeah, it's actually extremely useful for that because we publish data at an individual government level. So if you know the governments in your jurisdiction that you're looking for, you can literally go get the data for each individual government and slice and dice it, add it up, divide it how you please. And we do have some extensive detail in revenue, different tax types, and a lot of detail in expenditure as well, as far as the functions that the expenditures are being put out for. So yeah, it sounds like from what you're doing, it would be a very good fit.
Our next caller is Paul. Paul, please go ahead and unmute yourself. Hello, Paul.
Municipal government. And do I understand correctly that the ACS data is not available at the local city or municipal government level?
Mary, could you please assist Paul?
Yes, Paul. So we do have city level. It's under place. So the census doesn't explicitly say that it's a city, but if you look under the place geography, you will see that cities, towns, and villages are usually within that. And we also do have metropolitan statistical areas, which are another option. But what I recommend doing is just going on data.census.gov, and you can do an advanced search and just see all the geographies to see which ones are available for what you're looking for.
Thank you, Mary. Our next question comes from Lena. Lena, please unmute yourself to ask your question.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. My question is about, do you have any information about males involved in domestic violence that was awarded to children by court order, and they're just homeless?
So that does not sound like anything that I am familiar with, and I don't know if my demographic counterpart may know any type of survey on the demographic side like that.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Mary. I'm not sure we have any surveys that collect that information.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Mm-hmm.
Our next caller is Norm. Norm, please go ahead and unmute yourself to ask your question.
Yes, hi, this is Norm. I hope I'm coming through this time.
Yes, hello.
Yes, hi. Thank you for the opportunity to ask this question. I'm an employee of the Puyallup Tribe of Indians in the Tacoma, Washington metropolitan area. And
Norm, some reason we are no longer receiving audio from you.
does that work this time?
Yes, we can hear you
Okay,
now.
try one more time here. Appreciate your patience. Again, I'm an employee of the Puyallup Tribe, and we in our grants office, we tried to parse out data in regards to the demographics for tribal members, some of whom may be Native American or Alaska Native alone or in combination with other races. And I looked at the welcome screen for the American or my tribal area, and I didn't see any information there as to how that would be parsed out. Is that something that can be done, or is it just, I guess that's my question. Is there a way to parse that out so that we would know of the tribal membership, how many also are in combination with another race as opposed to just a tribal member being Puyallup?
Hi, Norm. This is Mary with the ACS. Sorry to jump in, Linda. I was just going to say, if you wouldn't mind sending that question to the email address, there I can show you resources. I believe you can get that information on data.census.gov. My tribal area is just a different tool, but this data.census.gov might have a little bit more detail into what you're looking for.
Thank you. And just a real brief follow-up. We would also be looking for data on non-Puyallups that are American Indian or Alaska Native alone or in combination. So we need those two subsets of those two data sets.
Yeah, send an email and we will see what we can get for you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Mary, for your help. Our next caller is Jenny. Jenny, please unmute yourself to ask your question. Hi, Jenny.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just because my computer's wacky. So often with public sector, especially state level, budget is very different than expenditures and revenue. Is there anything in the government census that can compare budget as well as revenue and and what's spent, expenditures.
Hand that over to Steve.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
We don't have anything. We make extensive use of budget documents, and obviously the best laid plans, as you stated, don't always pan out. Probably the best you could do with that, I mean, you would literally have to take state budget projections and then match up our data, or actually the states themselves will often, and they do this on a 2 or 3 year cycle, throw their budget projections out there, and then a couple of years later they'll put the actuals in there. That would be probably your best source of this, because that's apples to apples. The National Association of State Budget Officers is also a resource. They conduct an annual survey of state general funds, and they may have some information on that as well. But we generally use budgets as kind of an information source of a last resort because, as you stated, what's in the budget isn't often what comes out in the end.
No, I work at a state library, and trying to explain that the budget is not expenditures and revenue is very hard.
Yeah. Like I said, it's the best laid plans, in what actually happens. But what you can do is if you look at any state's most recent budget document, they are generally going to have 3 years worth of data in there, and the oldest year will generally have both the original budget and the actuals that were spent in that year, and that can provide a good illustration of what was planned versus what was actually done.
Yeah, they just don't have the great tools that the census has.
Yeah, I understand. That would be nice. And there may be some individual states that have that on their state budgeting sites. Some of them have some pretty neat stuff on there, especially some of the transparency sites. So that's definitely worth a look.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Steve. And our next caller is Norm. Norm, please unmute yourself to ask your question.
I had my question answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next caller is Nick. Nick, I'm not sure if you're stuck in the queue as well or if you had a second question.
I do have another question. Back when you showed those branching trees of different categories of budget and debt and revenue and expenditure and so on and so forth for how the government information can be parsed out, I got thinking about how much of that goes to the category of other at the end. How much is there that winds up not really fitting in any category? And if there is something that doesn't fit any of the listed categories, is there an other category, or does it all go into something?
Okay, that would be a question for Melinda and Steve.
Yeah, so there actually is an all other category. And what we try to do with that, we do have online, you can find kind of our classification manual and get an idea of what goes in there, basically everything but the kitchen sink. And what we do with that category, and in some places it's rather substantial and in others it isn't. And basically what you're going to find in there are two things. One, you'll get something that may be done at a government-wide level that can't be easily categorized. And then you'll get some other functions that we don't enumerate separately. And what has happened over time is that if something in that other category starts to get rather large, we will eventually break it out as its own category. But as of now, you can basically assume it's a catch-all for everything that you don't see in our other categories.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. At this moment, with respect to your time, we would like to take 2-3 more questions. For any additional questions that we did not have the time to touch on, please feel free to send your questions to the contact information on this slide. So our next caller is Kent. Kent, go ahead and unmute yourself to ask your question, please.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I noticed that I guess a lot of questionnaires tend to ask about ethnic origin, which seems to be kind of a static category because I believe people, as they live their life, they may self-identify differently as to ethnicity. They may be assimilated in their own view. So they may, although they might not be, for example, of Hispanic origin, they might feel that they're partly Hispanic or bicultural Hispanic. And that happened to me when I lived 15 years in Puerto Rico, used as a minority one. So I picked up a lot of characteristics and cultural things. And so I don't feel comfortable just as if I would identify as, quote, North American. I consider myself sort of blended. So I don't know if what that, it just seems to be, as a sociologist and a marker for that, the ethnic origin, maybe if that's fixed in time as the if and when you're born and never ever changeable, then you might be missing a variable as to how people self-identify over time.
Hi, Kent. So the ACS is not necessarily a longitudinal survey, so we don't interview the same people over time. We're interviewing an independent, randomly selected sample every year. So we wouldn't necessarily be able to track that type of sociological phenomena, but we do use the OMB standards for ethnicity and categories.
Okay, and I guess I asked the wrong, component of the Census Bureau because that's not maybe an ACS, but I need to ask elsewhere, look at other data. But it just seems some things are fluid and not always fixed as to how people self-identify. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for your help. Thank you, Kent, for your question. And our last caller for today is Jenny. Jenny, please go ahead and unmute yourself to ask your question.
Hi. So my other question is about quasi-governmental organizations. Are they included in the government surveys? In Connecticut, we've got several quasi-governmental and they show up in our register manual. So I'm just wondering, like, what are the standards to be included?
Okay, Steve may be able to help us with that.
No, glad you asked. That's a good question, and basically kind of establishes, we have a set of criteria that we use to establish our universe and basically draw the line between the public and private sector. And so essentially there are kind of three characteristics we look at, and one is pretty straightforward, is this thing actually organized? The second one is, does it have governmental character? For example, does it have taxing power? Does it have, regulatory power? Is it providing public services, that sort of thing? And then the last one really is a test of, kind of administrative and physical autonomy as to whether or not it's its own unit or part of another unit. So when you start talking about quasi-governmental organizations, it's really a mixed bag. And to be honest with you, we handle that on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Jenny, for your question. At this moment, I would like to express our thanks to everyone again for attending today's webinar. And I wanted to put this out there to promote our Census Survey Explorer, an easy-to-use data tool that allows you to find out which census surveys have the data variables that you're interested in. So if you have not checked it out yet, please feel free to go check it out. It's the Census Survey Explorer. And thank you everyone again for your interest in today's webinar. This concludes today's presentation. Have a great day. Bye-bye.